Hello, David Ansara here from the Center for Risk Analysis. We are a think tank based in South Africa with a global perspective, and we help individuals and organizations to understand the risks in the present environment, to prepare for an uncertain future, and to prosper tomorrow. And today we are focused on the issue of property rights, especially in light of a recent judgment from the Cape High Court, which prohibited the city from managing and evicting illegal land occupiers. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Dr. Anthea Jeffery of the Institute of Race Relations, who's written an article in the Daily Friend online newspaper regarding some of the implications around this case and some of the risks in terms of the property rights framework in South Africa more broadly. Anthea, welcome to the CRA channel.
Thank you, David, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to speak to you and all your viewers.
Anthea, please could you provide just some background context on this case, because I think it's really relevant for the broader discussion around property rights.
Absolutely. President Cyril Ramaphosa has said repeatedly that South Africa will not tolerate land grabs, and yet unfortunately land invasions have been happening at an increasing pace in many different parts of the country. And they seem to have accelerated under the lockdown regulations which bar evictions. And the problem has been particularly acute in the city of Cape Town, perhaps for political reasons as well, because there they have experienced a real upsurge in land invasions, marked, for example, by the fact that there have been more than 100 of them since the 1st of July, that their anti-land invasion unit has had to break down 55,000 structures that were unoccupied at the time, that according to the mayor of Cape Town, the city has lost something like 200 football fields worth of vacant land to illegal occupations in the last 2 years. So the city feels very strongly that when an illegal land invasion takes place, they can rely on a common law right. If a property owner has been dispossessed of their property by unlawful means, then they can, provided they act very quickly, take action to evict the occupier. And they must do so before the shack or the tent or whatever structure has been erected becomes a person's home, is occupied and turned into a home. Because at that stage, it becomes protected by what is known as the PI Act. It has a very long, complicated name. But in essence, it says that you can't be evicted from your home without a court order. And we also have a constitutional right which says that people can't be evicted from their homes without court orders. So what the city is doing is saying that there is a relatively small window of opportunity where a shack or a tent or some other structure has been put up unlawfully for the city to move in to demolish that shack and to evict the people who have not yet turned into their home. And they say this is very important to do for all the reasons that we can elaborate on in due course. But there was particular controversy at the beginning of July when in one of these operations by the anti-land invasion unit in the Khayelitsha area, a man by the name of Bulelani Kalani was videoed being hauled naked out of his shack by members of this unit. And this naturally caused a great upsurge of public indignation. The story is a bit more complicated. It's worth just bringing out the other side of it, because it was, according to Mr. Kalani's affidavit, his own choice to take off his clothes, to go and stand naked in front of his shack when he saw the members of the unit coming, saying he wanted to take a bath. And then he went back into his unit, or into his shack when the members of the unit arrived. They brought him out, he resisted, and so there were these very distressing pictures which were sent around the world. According to the city of Cape Town, it's now become a strategy for people trying to resist eviction in this way to undress themselves, because it creates such a sense of embarrassment and members of the unit are likely to withdraw. So be that as it may, the people who manhandled Mr. Kalani in this way are being disciplined, but the Human Rights Commission also decided that it was going to take the case to court. And it sought, first of all, an interim interdict, preventing the city from breaking down unoccupied shacks without a prior court order, and it is seeking for a final order which will have an even more permanent effect. The interim order applies for the period of the emergency or disaster regulations the final order would have permanent effect. So that's the background, that's the context to the judgment that was handed down on Tuesday last week.
All right, so Anthea, this is an interim interdict that will prevent the city from basically evicting illegal land occupiers, and there will be a final declaratory order in October. Is that correct?
That's correct, but when the case goes back in October, the applicants, the Human Rights Commission, supported by the EFF as an amicus curiae, a friend of the court, will be asking the court to declare that common law remedy of counter-spoliation invalid, so that from then on, irrespective of whether we have disaster regulations in place or not, there will be no opportunity for any landowner who is unlawfully dispossessed to use that quick, immediate remedy of breaking down the structure, evicting the person who's been an illegal occupier. That common law remedy will fall away completely.
All right, so I think just one example is the Western Cape Nature Conservation Board in Mfuleni, which on the 17th of June had 0 cases of illegal shacks being erected on that conservation property. But just under a month later, on the 15th of July, they had up to 3,000 shacks illegally erected. So this seems to be not just vagrants or squatters, but a coordinated mass-scale land invasion programs that are being run by very sophisticated organized groups.
That's exactly right. And so you have a large number of people, hundreds of people, invading a property at the same time. You have shacks put up extraordinarily quickly, stands picked out, the shacks put up. Sometimes you have almost complete structures just dropped onto the land so that they can be occupied as quickly as possible. And the city of Cape Town brought these sorts of factors before the court. They talked about the fact that if you're losing such a large quantity of land in a 2-year period, these 200 football fields which they described, then this is a major issue and it has major ramifications for all landowners. And yet the court dismissed it. They reduced all these arguments to budgetary and other housing pressures on the city of Cape Town and said these couldn't override the rights of poor people to seek shelter by setting up informal settlements on land belonging to somebody else. And that seems a really short-sighted view. The court did indicate that the city or any other landowner can always go to court and get an order to authorize the eviction. But the reality, of course, is that it takes a long time to get an order, even on an urgent basis. And once you have the kind of free-for-all that's likely to be encouraged by this ruling, then the court rolls will be clogged with people trying to get these kinds of urgent court orders. And of course, the moment that the shack has been occupied and turned into a home, then it becomes more difficult to achieve any kind of relief. And if 6 months pass, then no relief is possible unless the landowner can show that alternative accommodation is available. So it does seem an extraordinarily short-sighted remedy, which looks only at one part of the problem, which is the fact that people who are homeless are looking for some kind of relief, and ignores all the other aspects of the problem, including the fact that there are now many people who've been on the housing waiting list in the city of Cape Town for 15 years or so, and they get elbowed aside by the people who legally invade, who set up an informal settlement, which inevitably pollutes water and so on. The city gets then under great pressure to start providing whatever services can be put in on an emergency basis. The housing budget has to be diverted to that need. So all the needs of those on the housing waiting list simply get shoved aside. And it's very much more expensive to try and provide infrastructure in an informal settlement that's just been erected without any planning. Often the land is completely unsuitable. But beyond that, you're also sending a message to all property owners, landowners, that their property ownership is not safe. That if an illegal land invasion takes place, they don't really have an effective remedy. Because for the court to say you can get a court order authorizing the eviction is simply unrealistic.
Well, thank you, Anthea. I think that this underscores a broader trend in South Africa, which is the erosion of property rights more generally. We're obviously aware of the debate, which has not gone away, around expropriation of land without compensation, proposed changes to the Section 25 of the Constitution. But this is also a legislative thrust, and also the courts themselves diluting the very important foundation of property rights more broadly. And I think it's, as you point out, the thrust of the court's argument in this interdict was to protect the vulnerable. But property rights are there not just to protect the wealthy in society, but also to protect the rights of ordinary people, many of whom their property is the only asset that they have. They need legal recourse to protect that. All right, well, thank you very much, Anthea. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights with us today. If you got value out of this video, please do give it a like and share it on your social networks. Please remember to subscribe to the CRA channel and hit that bell icon to receive alerts on our daily videos. And also, we are running a 30-day free trial at the moment. So if you would like to benefit from our risk reports and our daily insights, you can follow the link in the description below. Until tomorrow morning, take care.